and you realize that sand is a bunch of shells. It's the exoskeleton of creatures that are just smashed, and rocks smashed and smashed and smashed until it broke up into little bits. But it's still those rocks. It still has, and rocks hold the history of the earth, so it's fascinating. There's so many layers to talk about and go into about just who we are, and then when you talk about spirit, then you're really getting into the juicy stuff.
Right. Absolutely. I love talking about spirit because it is. I mean, it's that invisible part, right? I mean, there's just so much to the spirit and whether we call it the spirit world or whatever, however we want to refer to that. But it is the juicy stuff, and it's totally, it's just another world, and it's beautiful, and it's all part of the same universe. It's not like it's separate. This is separate from, it's invisible, and this is visible. They're not separate. It's all part of the same continuum. It's all part of the same. So one of the things that I wanted to ask you now, and it's just slipped my mind, about the Day of the Dead, because one of the things, and I never thought to even ask this, I was just at the Monarch Butterfly Festival that they have in Minneapolis, and it's just beautiful. And there's a lot of different. Have you been there? Have you seen it?
Not in Minneapolis. No, I saw the monarchs migrating once in California, and it was magical. They were just on their way to Mexico or wherever they go, and they're just like little pieces of paper flying all over, and they're so beautiful and they're so light. And then they would gather on a tree, and there would be so many of them, and they kind of sit there and then fold their wings up, and there were so many of them the branches were drooping. It was just beautiful. It was dripping with monarchs.
Isn't it? Yeah, it's incredible. And for just the whole story of, right, the caterpillar transforming itself into this beautiful butterfly, and right, it's just so symbolic of life and death, and how gorgeous they are, and how they know how to go home. So when they were in California, I'm assuming then, were they migrating back from the north, heading down to Mexico? Is that what you said?
And they don't always live the whole journey. So when the ones that are reborn just know. The ones that are born, in the process, they just know. Just like the turtles who lay their eggs, and then they, all the little turtles come out and they take off, they go in the ocean, and they might swim around the world. They come back to that beach to lay their eggs that they were born on.
Yeah, right. So how can a monarch know where to go, and however many thousands of miles it is, and how can that turtle who's just coming from an egg, there's nobody directing them, how can they know that? I mean, there's so much to us.
How can we know? We if we really go, I practice meditation, and if we really go inside, if we really allow ourselves to feel the expansiveness of ourselves, how do we know? Like, a lot of people are confused. What do I do with my life? What do I do here? What do I do there? If you tune in to yourself, too. You're just like the monarch butterfly and that turtle. You know what to do if you tune in and clear yourself, and don't drug yourself, and don't get caught up in all the things, whether it's other people's ideas or society's expectations or families, but that goes back to the talking about your dead people. Like, you can conjure them up. And even if, whether you believe in spirituality or not, I do, but I also know that, like, I can conjure somebody up who died, let's say my brother, he died 22 years ago. I can conjure him up. And a friend of mine who's Hindu said, how can you? It's so long, he's moved on. And I said, he's a part of me. I am conjuring up him. He's a part of who I am. He was my big brother. He taught me to swim and to tie my shoes and to shoot a gun and to ride a bike. Like, he's a huge part of me. So when I conjure him up, I'm not only conjuring up, let's say, his spirit, which it doesn't, it's not like, oh, it goes away, it turned into something else. Whatever we are and whatever our emotions are, they reverberate out around us, and it changes. Like, that's why I try to keep my vibe positive. It changes everything around us. You know, we can feel each other whether we're aware of it or not. And I believe so even after death. But even if you believe that their spirit is gone, they're dead and they're in the ground, and you don't have any relationship to the spirit, they're still a huge part of you. They're a part of who you are, and you can bring that up and heal that and love that and work through that which you have, which is just inside of you.
Absolutely. And I believe too, because it seems to me that many people, somebody will pass away unexpectedly, or there's an argument, you know, maybe in the morning before somebody leaves for work, and then there's a car accident or a heart attack, and they parted on bad words, bad feelings, and that the survivor, the person who doesn't pass away, feels so guilty because there was that argument that happened. And I tell people, I truly 100% believe with every fiber of my being that you can have a conversation with that person, and where they're at, that the argument's done. That argument is completely done.
Well, it doesn't matter anymore. That's
right.
when you realize nothing that you thought mattered matters. It's only love that matters. It's only just awareness and connection that really matters. But it is hard to part on, you know, just even if somebody dies in a harsh way, if they're murdered or whatever, it's hard to sit with that and carry that through and not feel that that they had felt bad things before they died. And I think that's a part of our life lesson. I feel like we are here to learn and to grow, and everything we learn and grow from everything, whether we like it or not. Like, some people they don't give a hoot about learning and growing, and they're just living their lives, and they don't feel it matters. Let's just say, I think most people care about learning and growing, but some don't. They're still learning and growing, whether they realize it or not. And whatever it is that they need to learn in this life, that's what's going to happen, you know. And it might look like a horror from, you know, I mean, if you look at a lot of the world and the things that happen to people or are happening to people, it is a horror. And it's but I think that it's all part of our life lessons. I'm not saying that anyone deserves a horror. It is life. Life is not just like, oh, yay, you know, we get to do all these wonderful things, and there is so much to be happy about, but there's also so much to work on and to be sad about and to be angry about, and all these emotions that people are like, oh, you shouldn't feel those things. Actually, you should. You learn from them. You shouldn't get stuck in those emotions, but to feel them is very real, very human. We're not simple beings. None of us. We're very complex, and we're full of the full spectrum of emotions. And I think it's important to embrace them all and to learn from them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, Michelle, we have so much more to talk about, and I want to continue this conversation. I want to stay on this about talking about emotions and how it is that they serve us and our awareness. So we have run out of time for this episode. Would you be willing to come back and continue a conversation with me for next week?
Absolutely. This is my favorite thing to talk about.
Okay, awesome.
All of this stuff, I love. That's yay.
Okay.
I look forward to it. Thanks for including me on your show.
Absolutely. Yes, because there's so much more that I want to know, and I love your insight. So for today, I'm going to wrap it up and tell the listeners thank you very much for being here. And Michelle's page is on Facebook, and this will be in the show notes, and it's called Good Grief. And we will be back next week to continue this conversation. So thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Yes. The group is a closed group, so you just have to ask to join.
Closed.
It is a closed group, yes. It was open to start, and then I closed it. So one just simply has to ask to join. And if somebody says something janky to somebody else, you know, if they're not, it's all about, the only reason to be there is to express yourself and love and support others. It's not a place to make a point. It's not a place to promote yourself. It's not a place for religious ideas. It's simply purely for grief, death, loss, and spirit. Any aspect of those things. It's very open otherwise. So thank you very much. Have a great day.
Yeah. Thank you, Michelle. And we will be back with Michelle next week. And to all of the listeners, have a beautiful rest of your week and tune in next week to hear the second part of my conversation with Michelle Boss. Thank you, Michelle. Bye-bye.
Thank you for spending time with us today. Please go to nadahogan.com for show notes and other information you can use right away. If you like what you heard here, please subscribe to our show and don't forget to rate and review right there on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever you get your shows. And don't forget to tell your friends about it. We'll see you next week.